Ayan. So last week we had Dr. Ria May Borromeo who shared to us technologies that are really useful for educators. So basic things that we need, internet, laptop, mobile devices. So sa next session po with Dr. Ria, mga offline technologies naman po ang pag-aaralan natin. Okay. So the use of Moodle, na-discuss po niyo yon. How to use it offline. Okay, next. Okay, so she also showed us, nag-try din tayo, we hopped into her Google Classroom and we had like a quick feel of how it looks like. So sino po sa inyo na na-try nyo po after that session? Okay, so may mga presentation software na share si Dr. Ria, hindi lang pala PowerPoint, no? Meron ding Google Slides, Slidebean, and yung OBS na sobrang useful ngayon, especially if nag-online teaching na po tayo. Ayan, so ito po once again, this line talaga ang striking na na-share ni Dr. Mel during our first session. Technology will never replace great teachers, but technology in the hands of great teachers will be transformational. Ayan. Let me welcome po natin as he would be introducing our speaker for this morning, the Provincial Officer for Zamboanga Sibugay Province, Focal Person for ICT Literacy and Competency Development Bureau of the Department of Information and Communications Technology, Sir Rodrigo Macansantos.
Again, welcome to our webinar. And for me now, I am very honored and pleased to introduce to you our resource person. Our resource person is a professor and dean of the Faculty of Management and Development Studies at UP Open University. He is also an affiliate faculty member in the Master of Distance Education program of UPOU's Faculty of Education. In 2003, he was part of the team that developed the first online course on online teaching and learning, designed to capacitate UP faculty members in e-learning. Since then, he has been involved in the development and delivery of online courses, both for formal and non-formal programs for UPOU and other institutions in the country. He has published several articles related to open and distance e-learning as applied to management studies in books and academic journals. So, ladies and gentlemen, our viewers, let's welcome Dr. Primo G. Garcia. Sir.
Buenos dias. So I'm going to share my screen right now. Good morning, everyone. Buenos dias to our friends in Zamboanga City, and good morning and magandang umaga to all our other friends from other parts of the country. So as mentioned by our host, we'll be discussing educational resources in remote teaching and learning. For today's presentation, I'll start with the pedagogical framework for the use of educational resources, and I'll be describing what learning resources are, and then discuss the instructional uses of online learning resources, and of course, how we're going to use them in coming up with an online course plan. So I think a lot of us are thinking right now, how do I convert my lectures online? As most of us are teaching in face-to-face and brick-mortar classes, we normally deliver our lessons or content through lectures, and that's fine. And when this pandemic happened and we had to have some lockdown or some quarantine in different parts of the country, some teachers decided to do a web stream of their lectures as an emergency response. But moving forward, we should be able to see or consider the learner's profile. We should be able to consider the context in which our students situated so that we may be able to impart to them the content in ways that they can access. So in terms of learner's profile, we need to think of the level of digital literacy for our students. And there's really no problem with that because a lot of our students are digital natives for one. So they're even more adept at using technology, compared to us who are more like digital immigrants. And then we have to consider their learning styles, access to gadgets, access to reliable internet. And the same thing applies to the teachers. And then we also have to consider the affordances as well as the limitations of both asynchronous or synchronous online communication. Well, as we know, asynchronous communication is communication that doesn't take place in real time, while synchronous is the one that takes place in real time. So itong lecture na to, this is an example of asynchronous communication. So aside from the fact that we are in a public health emergency right now, we need to be able to think about our learners. These are what we call the Gen Z learners. These people were born at the time when digital technologies are all around us. They're the type of learners who would who would watch a YouTube video to learn how to cook or to sew something or to fix something rather than read a book. They're the type of learners who can do multitasking, watch TV, post something on Facebook, and then take a selfie and post it on Instagram later. But these people are also the ones who are not equipped with evaluating the kinds of digital content that they are sharing. No? And this can be attributed to the fact that these are young people and they still lack experience. Now, before I formally define what resource or educational resources are, let me share with you the instructional framework or approach on which the use of educational resources is based. And this is resource-based learning or RBL. Now, resource-based learning is an educational model where students are encouraged and enabled to use a variety of print, non-print, and human resources to seek information and solve problems. So in the case of digital resources, they are a combination of specially designed learning resources and interactive media and technologies. And they promote higher order thinking skills through learners' active engagement with the relevant resources. So as opposed to the usual giving of lectures where the students are taking on a more passive role, meaning they just listen to you. But from time to time, of course, you would ask them questions so that you would get some feedback whether they understand the lesson or the lectures or not. But for the most part, students play a passive role in the case of lectures. In resource-based learning, you provide them with a range of resources to deliver the content or the lessons so that they are exposed to different perspectives, different ways of seeing things, as well as different ways of explaining the same concept so that it addresses the different ways by which people learn. And also promotes active learning in the way you design it. Because later on, I will discuss how you can design or incorporate activities with resources to be able to promote active learning. Okay. So why are we discussing educational resources in the first place? Basically, our aim is to be able to transition to remote teaching or learning or even online learning. And learning resources are part of the online course development plan. I'm sure this has already been discussed in your previous webinars. So like for instance, in UPOU and in most other online universities, the first step to developing a course is to come up with an online course development plan, which is sometimes called the Horizontal Syllabus. So you have there in the first column the module or the unit, and of course the schedule, the learning objectives of the module, and the topics. And of course, as teachers, you're all familiar with this. We all adopt an outcome-based approach to teaching and learning. But For online course development, we also have to be more concerned about the learning resources that we provide the students, the learning activity that goes with those learning resources, and of course, the assessment. So later, we'll see how we'll be able to fill out this form to enable us to prepare for our transitioning to remote teaching and learning. So what are educational or learning resources? So I'm sure a lot of you have been using these materials in your own class. So have you been using textbook? You may want to answer in the chat. No? Have you been using handouts? Have you been using PowerPoint slides? Have you been using email to communicate with your students, or even social media? If you've been using all these materials all along, then you've been using educational learning resources. So basically, it refers to any form of material developed or created for instructional purposes. The pedagogical materials transfer the knowledge to the learners, no? And this would include presentations, books, documents, website, etc. We need to remember that it includes both the informational content as well as the learning activity in which the content is embedded. So learning resources, as mentioned, can be print, which includes books and journals, non-print, which are usually digital, but not all non-print materials are digital, and some may be analog. And of course, the human resource, no? The teacher, which is the most important resource in a classroom, whether it's offered online or in a brick and mortar conventional classroom. Regardless of the type, the overall goal of the learning resource is to support the learning outcomes of the curriculum. As mentioned, there is specific type of learning resource that has become more commonly used today, given the changes in our information communication technology and the way people nowadays consume and share information. And these are what we call the digital learning resources. So these are digital assets that are used for instructional purposes, like an image, a video, an audio clip, or a text on the internet. Just like the basic definition of a learning resource, a digital learning resource is composed of the digitally formatted materials as well as a learning activity that supports the learner achievement of the described learning goals. Now, digital resources can be classified according to the learning task. So, one type of material is called the narrative learning resource, where the learners are expected to basically assimilate the information presented. The narrative medium is used to present the subject matter. So basically, these are the resources that provide you the same content or information as the lecture, traditional lecture. So examples of these would be the web pages and websites, ebooks, images, video files, PowerPoint slides, and animation. So you can see here the subject matter expert, which is the teacher, is now sort of cloned by the narrative resources that we can see on the screen. So what is the role of the teacher then? Are we being replaced by digital resources? Not exactly. The thing is, the teacher takes on a somewhat different role in this kind of learning environment. We are more like curators guiding our students. We curate or we select all the resources that are available out there to be able to choose the ones that are more suited for our learners so that they may be able to achieve the learning outcomes that we have set for them. And for sure, you know that there's a lot of crap out there in the internet. And it is our role as teachers to be able to present them those that are appropriate, valid, reliable, up-to-date, and the like. But learning resources are not only there to provide the content, no, or the subject matter. They can also be interactive. So these examples like Hypermedia's search engines and gateways and portals can be used for tasks that are exploratory or investigative, and the interactive medium returns information based on user input. So like for instance, if you want your students to do a research on a certain topic using the internet or search engine like Google Scholar, then that becomes interactive, no? Because the person or the learner is interacting with a search engine. And the information that is provided by the search engine is also acted upon by the learner to be able to come up with a research report, for instance, or a paper or an essay. Now, it can also be classified as adaptive if it is used for tasks involving experimentation and practice. In this case, the medium continuously adapts to user input. So examples of this would be virtual worlds, simulations, models, interactive tutorials, and even online games. No? So in this case, the learner or the student learns a certain skill through experimentation by interacting with the medium. Like in the case of an online game, a learner interacts with all the characters and all the sequences and hurdles and challenges that are posed to the student along the way. Now, of course, we also have communicative digital learning resources, and most of us are familiar with this. So this can be used for online discussions and debates. So if you have chat, video conferencing like Zoom, Google Meet, and instant messaging like Messenger for synchronous communication, and you have email and discussion boards for asynchronous. Now, based on my experience, our students are located in different parts of a city or a town, and they come from different social strata. They have different levels of access to the internet. And in fact, I was talking to a colleague from another university several weeks ago. I think when the pandemic was getting serious here in Luzon and the general quarantine was imposed, the teachers decided to communicate with the students synchronously, just like what she does in her own classroom before. No? And she does it by video conferencing. And then later on, yung ibang estudyante niya were directly communicating to her, "Ma'am, mahirap po kami makipag-communicate through video con kasi nauubos po agad yung load namin." So she decided to make use of chat instead of video conferencing. And for those students who really do not have access to the internet, she had no choice but to call them, no, personally call them, even use telephone as the means for communication. So there are advantages and disadvantages between the use of synchronous and asynchronous communication. And we should be aware of those advantages and limitations given the tasks that we're asking the students to do and the profile of our learners. Now, there could also be productive media where the tasks where students articulate or express their understanding of the subject by generating or constructing their own representations of knowledge. So basically, we are asking them here to represent what they have learned. And of course, the internet being a multimedia format is the best way to be able to do that. So we have web and multimedia authoring tools, word processing tools, image processing tools, audio and video capture and editing tools, blogs, wikis, and shared writing and drawing systems to be able to do that. Now, digital learning resources can also be classified based on format like text, which include the online articles, the websites, the ebooks, blogs, manuals, and reports. And then we have graphics, photos, paintings, drawings, cartoons, illustration. We have audio or podcast, video. This could be online videos on the web like YouTube, or institutionally produced videos like the ones that we have just seen at the start of this webinar. Animations, which are very good for demonstrations and showing processes. We have simulation, and then of course games. No? Now you may ask, why use digital learning resources and why not print? Well, print has an important role to play at this point. We're not excluding print. In fact, I'll be showing to you a while ago how print like books can be incorporated, because in certain situations, when access is a problem, we have no choice but to deliver our content in print, no? Or combine print with some accessible online technologies. So first of all, it's more easy to regularly update content if you're using digital learning resources. Kasi nga, through dahil electronic ang format nila, you can readily update them. No? Like, we're all familiar with this. No? So kung meron kang a paper that is in Word document, if you want to update it, you can just readily open the file and then revise it. No? Pero kung na-print na yan at na-reproduce na yan in thousands of copies, no? Updating it is more difficult. Now, if you design it properly with learning activities, it can lead to more engaged learners and expand the learning opportunities for learners. Since automation is possible through web-based technologies, it allows for immediate feedback to learners, and of course, you have also the email and other forms of technologies to easily communicate with them, either one-on-one, one-to-many, or one-to-class. And then it facilitates collaborative learning, since there are a lot of collaborative tools in the internet that can be used by students and teachers. And of course, by enhancing their digital skills, you are basically preparing your learners for transitioning to employment. Because in the years to come, it is expected that a lot of the jobs will revolve around ICT-based jobs. They may not be exactly about producing programs or software, but they would require IT skills and digital skills to be able to perform those jobs. So we should be able to prepare our learners for that future. Now, when selecting resources, we have to keep these in mind. First, they have to be accessible, meaning they're easy to locate, they're current, they are rich in terms of the variety of perspectives that they provide. This is especially applicable in social science and humanities subjects. Purposeful use of media, meaning the appropriate media is used. Like, of course, video is more appropriate in presenting processes, demonstrating skills, or sort of simulating reality out there, or biophysical realities, while of course text is more appropriate in text, and graphics is more appropriate in explaining complex ideas. And then it has to be inclusive in terms of social, cultural, and gender inclusivity. Now, we can also look at resources in terms of the intellectual property rights that underpin them. Most of the materials or resources that are accessible on the internet are actually copyright materials, meaning, of course, all materials are copyrighted. We have to remember that copyright starts at the moment of creation. So the moment a person writes something, that is already copyrighted to that person. So those are what we call the traditionally copyrighted materials. So how do we incorporate these materials without violating copyright rules? The safest way is for us to just post the website address or the URL of the copyrighted resource in our course site or virtual classroom. So instead of uploading the whole article or the video or the podcast in your own Google Classroom, you can just link it to that site, to that external site. You just put in the URL website. But there are also times where you can also upload the whole article or some parts of the article, especially if you have secured the copyright owner's permission. You might be surprised that a lot of the authors out there are willing to share their materials if you just ask permission from them. In fact, in UPOU, we do this. We, for certain journal articles or certain book chapters that are copyrighted, we just write the authors or the copyright owner, the publisher, to allow us to use the material, stating that we are a public institution, we are from a developing country, and we are not going to profit from the use of those materials. We'll just be using them for academic purposes. Or you can also upload a part of a material in a course site under the fair use policy. Because in the copyright laws, there is a provision for fair use policy, meaning you use parts of a certain resource. The use of parts of a certain resource is allowed, provided that you use it for academic purpose only, and you don't profit from it. And then, aside from the traditionally copyrighted materials, there is the open educational resource, or the OER. So have you heard about OER? Okay, you may want to type your response, yes or no, in the chat box. In hindsight, I think we should have done a poll for this, but since you don't have a ready poll right now, you can type in your answer. So have you heard about open educational resource, or OER? Okay. So OER basically is part of the larger knowledge movement. So we're all familiar with open software or open systems, right? Like Linux, and of course the applications like Open Office. Some of us have been using these open software. Even Moodle is an open access learning management system. So open educational resource are just like any other educational resource, except for one basic difference. It's license. What do we mean by license? Basically, in an OPR, the author or the copyright owner grants other people like us, the users, the license or the permission to reuse and potentially adapt that resource. There is no need to request permission from the copyright holder for conditions specified. So you don't have to write and seek permission, unlike in a traditionally copyrighted material, which I described a while ago. Basically, the copyright is still retained by the author or the owner, but he or she is giving us the permission to use and even adapt the said resource, primarily for education. We can think of OER in terms of free or formal grant of permissions. So for instance, if the author grants us permission to retain or to redistribute, this simply means that the public will always have free access to the resource. So that's the free access consequence. Yung first part, free access of consequence. Kung ang permission is retain or redistribute, we can access it, put it in our own Google Classroom, or even share it with our students, share it with our colleagues, share it with everybody. But then there's another level, more liberal permission, which includes reusing, revising, and remixing. These types of permission, the resources can be used in novel ways. This is what we call the OER-enabled pedagogy consequence, meaning you can modify the resource, you can add something to it, remove something out of it, combine two educational resources, and remix it and mash it into one. You can do that if the permission for you to do that was given by the by the author. So how do we know that such permission was given? We'll discuss that later on. So just to give you a picture of the different types of OER that are available out there, it can range from full courses down to standalone learning objects like podcasts, video, and even a learning activity or even assessment. So that's the range of OER that are available out there. Now, why do we use OER, you may ask? First, it is accessible. A lot of these were written by teachers and academics like us. So we can say that a lot of these are of high quality and relevance. And they provide greater prospects for students to take on a more active role in the educational process. Because we are using OER as part of a resource-based learning strategy, where students are allowed to do more active learning. And there is potential to build capacity of institutions and educators to produce affordable educational materials and design these into high-quality programs. Now, there could also be disadvantages, like you need to check the accuracy before use because you were not the one who developed it. You have to really check the accuracy, excuse me. And some may not meet accessibility requirements for persons with disabilities. Now, this is especially true if we want to be really exclusive with teaching and learning. And then some may require technical requirements, which, for instance, some resource would require a certain application for you to be able to use them. So that may be a concern for you if you're not familiar with that application or software. And some may need a high degree of customization or localization in the OER community. A lot of these materials come from the West. And it's sad that we in Asia or in the South have not been contributing much in the production of OER. There have been efforts to do this. There have been consortia in Asia for the sharing and production of OERs, but a lot of the materials really are coming from the West. So there is a need to customize some of the OERs to suit local context or conditions. And for teachers who would like to produce their own OER or share it with the rest of the world, sometimes the schools do not reward these efforts. And some institutions may be concerned about giving these materials away. Now, let's go back to the question that I raised a while ago. How do we know if a resource is OER? Now, there's a broad range of legal frameworks out there, but the most commonly used is the Creative Commons or CC. So if you've been looking at resources in the internet or even using YouTube, sometimes you would see in the description box below the video on YouTube that there is a statement there that this video is released under Creative Commons license and etc. etc. This is a type of license that ensures that the authors of the material can retain acknowledgement for their work while allowing it to be shared, or can seek to restrict commercial activity if they wish, and can aim to prevent people from adopting it if it is appropriate. Now, what is a Creative Commons license? Basically, as I've said, a Creative Commons license is used when an author wants to give other people the right to share, use, and build upon a work that the author or that the authors have created. Now, basically, it's a set of permissions. It tells you what you can do or the extent to which what you can do to a learning resource or material. Now, it enables the free distribution of an otherwise copyrighted work, and it is good because it attempts to balance inside the traditional all rights reserved setting that copyright law creates. But remember, CC is not a patenting authority. You don't go to CC to have your resource certified as OER. It is basically, CC is basically a framework that allows you to define the set of permissions that you are giving to your users. Now, there are different kinds of CC licenses. You might have seen some of these in some of the resources out there. So these are the logos that indicate the type of licenses that the authors have given to the users. Some allow outright sharing and distribution of the material. Some allow adaptation or modification. Others do not. Some allow others to build upon the work and profit from it for commercial use it for commercial purposes. Others do not. So if you look at the licenses on the screen, the first one is the most pervasive. You can do anything to the material as long as you properly attribute the author. But the last one, CC by NCND, this is the strictest one. No commercial use can be used, no derivatives, which means you cannot adopt or change or remix it. You can simply share it with proper attribution from the author. You can put it in your own Google Classroom, you can put it in your own LMS, you can upload the material in your own website, but there's no modification that you can do with the material. You can share it, redistribute it to your students in that case, with proper attribution, of course, to the author, but no modification. Now, if the material has CC by NCND license, there's no problem. No? Kung sharing lang ang allowed, there are ways by which we can contextualize the material to be able to suit our own teaching and learning purpose. So to know more about CC license, you can go to creativecommons.org. Now, how do we find OER? Now, there are a number of OER repositories out there that you can go to. And basically, these are like search engines. You just type in the material that you are looking for, and then they will give you, it's like a library catalog that they would give you the materials in that fall under that topic or category. So we have Jorum, OER Commons, Temoa, University Learning OCW plus OER, Expert, OER Dynamic Search Engine. There is also the OpenWA Find OER. This search engine also includes a repository for books. It's a good way to find OER books. We have Open Professional Education Network, National Science Digital Library, iBerry, Merlot, Academic Earth, OpenStax, UPOU Networks. So plugging na rin sa UPOU, we have a online repository where you can find videos, mostly videos that have been released under CC license. You can use them. And then the UP system also has TVUP. They also have a lot of videos on a range of topics. In fact, for general education courses, you can find there are a lot of topics that have been produced as part of the 100 Narratives project, in which UPOU was also involved in terms of production. And then, of course, you can use the advanced Google search function of the search engine. Pag nag-advanced search kayo, di ba, sa baba doon, you can see yung license. Just click free to share and use. So maglalabas lahat doon yung materials that are classified under this license. And then if you are teaching in the basic education, we have the DepEd Commons, Khan Academy, Open Culture, ACT Academy, Curiki, Cool4Ed, and OutSchool. Now, if you can find your own material out there, then you can also create your own. Now, how do we know that an OER is good? First, Of course, it has to be findable, meaning it's located in multiple locations. It is clearly described. It is clearly licensed through Creative Commons. It's from a source that you can trust. Normally, we base the credibility or reputation of the material on the author and how it is distributed. No? If the material is produced by an academic or a teacher or a subject matter expert in that area, uh, then it's credible. And if it is produced by somebody who works for an institution, preferably a learning institution that is also accredited, recognized, or reputable, then it is something that we can trust. No? Now, this is now where the role of the teacher comes in. As teachers, we're supposed to be familiar with the experts in our own discipline. No? That's the reason why we do research, we publish, we cite other authors, we choose certain books over others because we are familiar with the work of other experts in our own discipline. We know who are the practitioners in our field that are into sharing their knowledge, so we know which sources we can trust. Preferably, we also want resources that are easy to modify, freestanding, meaning it does not assume knowledge of other resources. Like for instance, as I've said, it doesn't require like the knowledge of a certain software for you to be able to use them. And of course, free of copyright content. And this is especially true in certain materials like video. Some video materials may be released as OER, but there are some materials there that are not released as such. So copyrighted is certain materials like certain image, certain photo. Now, another way to find good OER is to ask for other people, your peers, and get their recommendations. And basically just find something that works for you. There is no such thing as a perfect OER. Now, how do we use OER or even copyrighted online learning resources? I'm not limiting my discussion on OER lang dito. So when I say learning resources includes both copyrighted and OER, because the reality is, for some of us, for certain disciplines, mahirap pumanap ng OER din. Like, if you are talking about science or mathematics, where you're dealing with universally accepted facts, it's easier to find OERs. But for certain courses that are very context-based, like yung iba minsan Filipino na nakuha ko yung feedback, nahihirapan silang mag-find ng OER. So there is no choice but to use also traditionally copyrighted materials. So pareho nating kinoconsider yan. So basically, we're using them to deliver content and as part of a learning activity or assessment. Because as we have defined earlier, an educational resource includes both the informational content as well as the learning activity or the context in which it is being used. So let's discuss the first part or aspect first, which is the use of online resources to deliver content. As I was saying a while ago, we can use the online learning resources that are available out there with our books, textbooks. As we know, especially in basic education as well as in undergraduate programs, we normally recommend a textbook. And what's good about textbook is that the content, the order of the topics have already been sequenced for us. It's easier for the students to follow them, di ba? Kasi since it's a text medium, it's a linear narrative. So, madaling sundan ng estudyante yan from the start to the end. But sometimes, a textbook doesn't contain all the topics or the things that we wanted to cover in our class. There's no such thing as a perfect textbook as well. Or sometimes the textbook is made by a foreign author and some topics or issues need to be contextual to the local condition. So you have to include or supplement it with other OER and digital resources, which could be a text, PDF, a video, or an audio. So since the book is already there, that becomes the skeleton on which you put in the additional digital learning resources. Another way is using available online learning resources and recorded videos or video conferencing chat. So in this example, the online resources are complemented by recorded introductory or summative videos and or synchronous class discussion through video conferencing or chat. So as you can see in the screen, you have there the PDF, the websites, the audio. These are the range of learning resources we'll be using to deliver our content, subject matter, right? But they come from different sources and they have been written for different purposes. How do you make them easily understood by our learners? So you have to provide some structure to them. And one way to do it is to provide an introductory video that sort of captures the main point, the main gist, the main argument that are being covered by the different resources that we provide to the learners. And then at the end, you can provide either a summary recorded video or you can do a video conferencing or chat with your students and ask them what do they think of the resource, and if do you have any questions about these materials, how does this apply to them, what aspect of these materials do they agree with or not. So in that sense, you also limit the asynchronous communication, which is really reliant on, which really consumes a large amount of bandwidth to do. You limit it at certain parts of the course only. And then you allow the students to explore the resources by themselves. Now, if the students are given that opportunity, the aha moments will come to them naturally. Kasi normally, when we do lectures, the aha moments are very rare kasi nga, sinusubo na natin sa kanila. Ang metaphor ko dyan is magluluto ka halimbawa ng, bibigyan mo sila ng pansit. Traditional lecture, ikaw na magluluto, papanoorin lang magluto ka, tapos before the end of the class, pakainin mo sila. Pero dito sa resource-based learning, you provide them with the ingredients. The ingredients, nandyan. Dun sa book, meron kang recipe na binigay sa kanila. So using the recipe and other guides, magagawa nila yung recipe na yon, lulutuin nila, at kakainin nila at a time na gusto nila. They don't have to eat it at the end of the class session, or they don't have to cook it at the time that you have set for them. Ganito din, or halimbawa dito sa case naman ng the use of available online resources and recorded videos or video conferencing chat, wala kang recipe ibibigay sa kanila, pero from time to time pumapasok ka, sinasabi mo, ito ang gagawin mo, ito ang gagawin mo, ito ang dapat gawin dyan. So merong moment of exploration na nangyayari on the part of the students. Now, this is very particularly useful for the Gen Z learners kasi they have been used to exploring the internet by themselves. Unlike before, when in our generation, when we go to the class and we're being taught how to use the library, tapos we can only access the library through school hours, and then after that, manghiram ka ng libro. Kung may naunahan ka ng classmate manghiram ng libro, then wala kang libro. Then you have to find other resources. Kung parents mo merong a collection ng Encyclopedia Britannica, well and good. Kung wala ka, Pero in Gen Z learners kasi, the young generation of today, they're adept at looking for information, looking for resources, looking for not only for entertainment, but for things that they want to find out in the internet. So they're more adept at that. And then you can also adapt online learning resources. Like for instance, you can just find collection of available online resources with written study guide. So ito yung instead of buying a recipe book and then giving it to them and then sila yung magluluto ng pansit, ikaw as a teacher, you give them your own recipe. Ito yung study guide. So the study guide provides the students with a roadmap how they're going to use the learning materials. No? So normally it includes an introduction, the learning objectives, the topics with annotated resources, the learning activities, and a summary. So it's also modular. It's similar to a book, no? Pero instead of the book discussing all of the concepts, you provide learning resources instead to do that for you. Pero you structure that in such a way that you introduce the topic, you present to them the learning objectives, so they would be cognizant or aware of what they want to achieve at the end of the course. And then, of course, you annotate the resources. Later on, I'll be discussing how you annotate resources. And then, of course, you provide learning activities. So what am I going to do with this resource? Then the learning activity guide would tell them what to do. And then, of course, the summary. So you use study guide. And then you can produce your own resources. Now, this is more, it takes a lot more effort. No? Some institutions would require this because they require branding. Like, for instance, all the videos are produced original. All the podcasts, all the manuals or handbooks in PDF formats are pre-produced, specifically designed for their own curriculum. Talagang, since it's designed specifically for those courses, there is very minimal guidance na, no, na ilalagay mo, no, or you're going to put or wrap around the resources. So you will find out that there are a lot of materials out there that you can use to deliver content or lessons. Madami. Malilito ka. So it's very important that we don't overload our students, because of course that would just lead to cognitive overload. No, we don't want that to happen. So we need to identify those that are essential to know relative to the target learning outcomes, those that are useful to know, and those that are merely interesting to know and can therefore be skipped. So in my experience, may mga resources na interesting to know lang, pero na-cover na yung meat or gist ng other resources. So I just put them under optional reading or viewing resources. If the student is active, gusto niyang to learn more, then he or she can go over the optional resources, but it's not required. Now, as I've said, it's not enough that we provide the resource which contains the content. We have to make sure that the learners are engaged in the online learning resource, meaning they interact with it in meaningful ways. There are two basic ways. First is through the use of learning scaffolds, like annotating the resource, providing study questions, and graphic visualizers. And the other way is through the use of online discussion forums and other learning activities. Let's consider the scaffolding of learning resources first. No? So I'm sure you're familiar with this. These are supports given to students in order to enhance the mastery of the content and presents the learning resources in a more structured way. So one type of scaffolding is annotation. Remember, I mentioned annotation a while ago when I was discussing yung use of learning resources to deliver content. So as you can see on the screen, the topic is cyberbullying. No? And this is a course that is offered in UPOU. It's called Ethical and Legal Issues in the Information Age. Basically, it's a course for teachers. Now, in here, the students are required to read an article as well as watch a video. So you have there the two resources. It is better if you provide the annotation so that students are sort of introduced to the content that you're going to present. But the annotation is detailed enough for them to have a general picture of the lesson, but not too detailed enough such that they don't go over the resources anymore. So ganun yung the way we do the annotation. You contextualize the resources that you've found in the internet to suit your target learning outcome. And you can do that by annotation. But annotation is not enough. You can also increase or enhance the interaction with the resource through the use of study questions. So using the same example, the students here are asked to reflect on the following questions about what they have learned about the seriousness of cyberbullying, and what do you think of the solutions provided in the learning resources? Do you agree or not, or why? So it's an opportunity for the students to think about it. Now, at the most minimum, you can just let the students to do this by themselves, or sometimes merong learning management system where students, like in Moodle, where the students can put in their short answer for reflections. Now, these are not graded but are submitted, so that nagkakaroon ng feedback din yung teachers as to how the students are moving along. And sometimes it can also be, you can also ask students to do blogs, no, where students will be putting in their reflection or yung metacognition, no, yung reflection nila on what they are learning. Another way is graphic visualizers, which are designed to generate ideas and help students organize this to clarify how they are related. Basically, as shown in the example, using the same situation on cyberbullying, the students are asked to write down the similarities and differences between cyberbullying and other forms of bullying below. No? So it's a way to organize their ideas. I'm sure as teachers, we're all familiar with that. And then, of course, there are other learning activities, no, that can be incorporated. So these are the experiences that we provide to the students in order to prepare them to achieve the intended learning outcomes. So in a learning activity, we provide the students with the opportunity to interact with certain resources, tools, and also interact with their co-learners and the teachers to be able to achieve specific outcomes. Now, I would like to focus on online discussion forum because it's the most commonly used learning activity, and it's quite easy to prepare also, especially if you want to transition immediately to remote teaching and learning. So online discussion forums allow us to extract factual knowledge and information from our learners, query students' comprehension. They enable learners to apply what they have learned, get learners to analyze information. They challenge the students to synthesize information and also evaluate content and make judgments. So it depends on how you formulate your study questions. They're basically akin to the questions that you ask students to answer during a class discussion. But since the students are separated from you in terms of time and space, I'm saying time because in some universities, some of their students are also located outside the country, so may time difference din. No? Pagka ganyan, we try to organize the activities in such a way that they can be easily conducted with minimal supervision from us. No? So dapat pag-isipan natin how we formulate the discussion questions in such a way na mako-cover niya lahat yung ating learning outcome, and then also it is motivating for the students to learn, to participate in. So using the same example on bullying, cyberbullying, here's an example of an online discussion question. After watching the video, answer the following. Could the cyberbullying problem in the video been avoided? Why or why not? How would you have addressed the cyberbullying shown on this video? So the students are not only asked to view the content and understand it, but to make judgment about it, no? To analyze it, no? Based, of course, on the lessons that you have imparted or shared with them, and also to think in terms of ways, no? In terms of applying the same resources or knowledge that they have gained in specific problem-solving context, no? Like exactly how cyberbullying in this context can be addressed in that situation. So in addition to the discussion questions, the students are also given some instructions like here, they're asked to post their answers from this date to this date. They are encouraged to react to each other posts. And it also tells the student that participation is required but will not be graded. This is what we call the online discussion protocol. You tell them you provide the students with a set of instructions on how to do the online discussion forum. Sometimes kasama din sa discussion forum yung how long minsan, yung citation protocol like plagiarism, sometimes yung binabanggit din natin, ini-encourage din natin sila na to be concise, pero yung mga cursory remarks like I agree are not considered substantial. Basically, sa online discussion forum, the teacher has an important role to play in terms of asking follow-up questions or at the very minimum summarizing the issues and concepts that were raised or perspectives that were raised during the discussion forum. Now, a learning activity can also be classified according to the outcome for which they are being used. So, for instance, for remembering, you can use online self-test, drills, and exercise. Understanding, you have there on the screen, discussion forums, blogging, tagging. For applying, you have there the examples of learning activities, analyzing, reflection, case study, group negotiation, and annotating videos. Evaluating, you have there the examples. Creating, you have also the examples on the screen. So basically, many of these activities are quite familiar to us because we've been doing this in our face-to-face classrooms, like class discussion, group work, project reports. But there are also others that are more technology-based, like virtual labs, the use of podcasts and webcasts, video recording, digital storytelling. So they're basically similar to the learning activities that we've been using in our own classroom, but this time they're more technology-based. Now you can also categorize the learning activities in terms of the type of interaction that you want to promote. So for learner content interaction, we have reflection, online tests, drills, discussion, debate, online tests, drills, practice, and exercise. And you have there the useful tools that you can use for the students to be able to do those learning activities. And then learner interaction, we have webinar, presentations, collaborative writing. And you have there the tools that they can make use of to be able to perform those activities. So those are other examples of learner-learner interaction activities, and then learner-teacher interaction. So regardless of the activity that you ask your students to do, we have to provide them with a set of guidelines, especially in remote teaching and learning. Dahil nga meron separation sa estudyante at teacher, if the students do not understand how a certain activity should be done, nagiging anxious sila. In distance education, we call this yung transactional distance. Pero we can address that through the use of learning activity guides, which specifies what needs to be done, how the task should be done, what resources and tools will be employed to do the task, who will participate in the task, and what their roles are, and how the performance of the task will be assessed if applicable. So here's an example where the students are asked to do a two-part activity. This is an exercise on on a topic related to organizational culture and values. So the students are asked to do a certain activity for them to be able to get a deeper understanding of the relationship between individual values and the culture of an organization. This is a management course. Now, in this exercise, the students are asked to read a short story, which is available in the internet. And I've been using this during my face-to-face classes before, no? And I just adopted it for online delivery. After reading the story, the students are asked to rank the characters from the most offensive to the least offensive and write down the reasons for doing so. After that, they're asked to do it as a group and also discuss among themselves and come up with a collective ranking of the characters and the reasons for them or for ranking them as such, you know, and then submit their work. And there are tips on how to organize the activity, the tools, the resources and tools that they can use. And then the assessment. So that brings our discussion close to the end. Basically, in the start of our webinar, na-cover natin yung online course plan, di ba? Present sa inyo. So, after discussing what learning resources are and how do we promote learner engagement through learning activities, we can now proceed with the preparation of the online course development plan, di ba? So you have there the module. This is an example for a course on organizational structure and relations in R&DM systems. The first topic is the system perspective of R&D organizations, which is going to be covered in week 1. You have there the learning objectives, and then the topics under that module or unit. And then these are the resources, learning resources that are the author or the teacher has gathered for that module. As you can see, there is a video that is available on the internet, and it is not OER. There is an article written by a foreign author, but author's permission was granted. And then there is an article that was produced by a colleague in the same department with author's permission. And then you have the learning activity in the form of discussion forum. The second module is about theories of organization. You have there the learning objectives and the topics and the learning resources. So in this case, there are 2 OERs that were used. One is it's actually a book, no? An OER book on the principles of management, but only a portion of that is being covered in this module, pages 55 to 79. And another resource is on different management theories, and it's also an OER, but it's a website. Now, in this case, the learning activity is also a discussion forum, and you have there the discussion question, and there's also an assessment. Now, this time it's a short online test or quiz on the theories of organization. So these are just examples of how learning resources and the accompanying learning activities can be incorporated in the online course development plan. I think you'll have another webinar discussing assessment in online or remote teaching and learning. Now, to summarize, digital learning resources allow us to meet the diverse needs of our learners while preparing them for the challenges of an increasingly digital society. Open education resources provides us with the means to achieve these learning goals by making knowledge products available to more people. And learning activities using online learning resources can promote active learning and student engagement. And activity guides are an important tool in facilitating resource-based online learning activities. So that ends my presentation. Do we need to cite the URL of the material if it came from the OER site? We need to cite it kasi most OERs, very basic yung proper attribution. It's one of the basic licenses, no? Kasi the copyright is still retained by the author or the copyright owner. So basically, kailangan pa rin nating attribute yung original source. Even if we download it from the original site and then upload it in our own virtual classroom, dapat isa-cite pa rin natin yung original author. No? Sinong author, anong title, kung sinong publisher noon, di ba? The usual bibliographic entry, no? Isa-cite pa rin natin yan. How about public domain and fair use? Ito yung public domain. Ito po yung mga resources na like Gutenberg project. Ito ba yung matatagal ng material? Mga, let's say, books na more than 100 years old. So naglapse na po yung dyan, yung copyright ng owner. So they are being shared, no, to everyone. So that's part of the open access resources. Now, yung fair use naman po, hindi po kasi ako lawyer, so hindi ako huwag niyo pong masyado i-take yung aking legal advice dito. No? Pero this has been my personal experience. I'm just sharing my personal experience. Kasi depende po yan sa country. Sa states yata, merong silang rule na, let's say a book. Pwede kang gumamit under fair use policy ng at least 10% of the book, either in terms of number of chapters or number of pages, whichever is shorter. Parang may ganung rule ako nabasa. Pero sabi naman ng isang local publisher dito na where I also did a webinar several days ago, sabi niya sa Philippines daw, allowed daw gumamit ng isang educational material for academic purpose kung gagamitin lang sa classroom. Kaso daw, baka iba daw yung policy pagka linagay mo na sa virtual classroom at in digital format na siya at na-share na siya sa estudyante. And then the estudyante would also share it to other people. So parang hindi lang siya nagagamit within the classroom. So parang meron daw gray area doon. Now, in case of doubt, just link the material to your virtual classroom. Diba? Kung hindi tayo sure, ilagay natin link. Pag nag-link ang estudyante doon, makakarating din siya doon sa material na yun. At doon niya babasahin sa site. Which means hindi tayo nag-violate ng copyright. Walang copyright infringement. Now, if you want to upload it in our own virtual classroom, kasi we need to be sure na ma-access siya doon, then we probably need to seek the permission of the author. And more often than that, pumapayag sila. I-explain lang natin na kung for what purpose natin gagamitin. Is Wikipedia a good example of CC license? I think Wikipedia has a open access license. The problem with Wikipedia is that anybody can put anything on it, diba? The principle is through parang contribution by the community, the material gets refined over time. We can use Wikipedia at meron ding Wikimedia Creative Commons, but we need to be sure na sila relevant, up-to-date, and reliable. And that's our role as a teacher to be able to judge those materials. No? Kaya hindi pa pwedeng kahit ang mga Gen Z learners natin are basically adept at finding resources. Kasi given their lack of maturity and knowledge, they still need our guidance. So our role as teacher now, online teachers, would be to curate, no? Select the materials that are appropriate for them and for our learning purpose, no? Pero that doesn't stop them from accessing other materials as well, no? That's the nature kasi of the online environment. Even if you provide them with a list of resources that they need to read or view, gagawa ng paraan niya pag hindi nila masyado naintindihan, no? Ngayon, it's up to them, no? Whether tama yung pagkakaintindi nila by using other resources. Sometimes, there are two things na pwedeng implication pag kumukuha sila ng other resources. Either the resources that you use are not easy to understand, the content may be valid and correct and reliable, but they were presented in a way that are not accessible or easily understood by your target learners. Pwedeng ganun yun. Or the problem is, ang estudyante is looking for other perspectives. Pwede rin ganun. Pero makikita mo yan doon sa learning activity. No? Let's say discussion forum, and you ask them a question related to a learning resource that you have provided to them. No? Pag sumagot yan, especially yung mga questions mo that that are designed for them to articulate their understanding of the concept or even apply them in specific context, makikita mo kung mali yung understanding. And at doon tayo papasok as teacher to guide them, no, towards yung tamang understanding of a certain concept. Doon natin magagawa yun. Pero as teachers, we also have to be aware of the language that we use in online communication kasi it's subject to misinterpretation. Due to the absence of social cues, physical cues, just like in face-to-face communication, it is prone to misunderstanding. So have to be very careful. No? Like for instance, pwedeng ang correction mangyayari not specific to a certain student, pwedeng correction pwedeng by email directly to a student. No? Pwedeng general siya, no? When you summarize the online discussion forum at the end of the week, pwedeng ganon. No? OER po ay ginagamit sa e-learning. OER is part of the learning resources that we use. Pero sabi ko nga kanina, kung wala kayo talagang OER na mahanap, pwede rin naman copyrighted. Tapos discuss ko kung paano nyo siya ipe-present sa classroom niya para hindi tayo ma-violate ng copyright. So marami pong hindi familiar pa rin sa OER, and this is actually not surprising. Basically kasi ang OER part of the larger open knowledge movement. This movement believes that knowledge should be made available to everyone. And therefore, educational resources have to be shared. And the best way to share them kasi is digitally. Kasi it's easier to produce and easier to distribute, no, as opposed to print. Pero OER can also be in print. The technology is good, but one of the problems we are facing now sa basic education is non-numerates and non-readers. Are there any suggestions or ideas po on how these problems can be addressed in a limited time and space given to teachers? So, I would assume na ang ibig pong sabihin dito is the students are not fully equipped, no, in terms of reading skills. Yung kanilang competencies are not at that level, and then in also in terms of their numerical skills, no. What's good about the use of online resources is that you can come up with different types of resources that would appeal to different types of learners. So, pwedeng ang content can be delivered in different modalities. Unlike sa traditional lecture, it's one, no, for everyone. It's one approach for everyone. Pero sa online learning, you can have a text, no, a material that is in text form. You can have it in video. You can have it in animation. You can have it in an infographic style, all presented side by side. So students would use them depending on their need and their capacity. So it could appeal to different learning styles. Now, there has been an observation that the Gen Z learners really do not want to read. No? This is a generation that is not parang characterized as being passionate readers. No? In fact, they are more multimedia types of learners. Kaya nga, ang maganda dito sa internet, yung resources that are available there are similar to the resources that they are already consuming as not as learners but as individuals, as persons. Like for instance, maraming resources sa science na available on YouTube. There are also channels that are also dedicated on science topics. And the creators are very, very creative in presenting those concepts and ideas in ways that are better explained, no, by these creators, no, kaysa sa ating mga teachers, no, simply because they probably speak the language of the younger generation. What can you suggest, OER, for persons with disability and students with special needs? Actually, pwede po nating magamit, may mga applications po na nagko-convert ng isang OER like from speech to text or text to speech, no? There are some applications out there that you can use para magamit ng differently able students natin. That's one way to ensure yung inclusion of people with disabilities and special needs, no? How do we do formative tests given that learners have access only to Facebook and Messenger? Actually, merong mga applications po where you can do online quizzes outside of Facebook. Kung Google Classroom ang ginagamit nyo, walang problema kasi you can easily set up online quizzes in Google Classroom kung yun yung formative test mo, no? Of course, there are other types of formative assessments. Sa Google Classroom, madali din mag-upload ng assignment, no? If it's a document or a file, no? Madali din mag-submit noon. Sa Facebook, I know that Facebook can be converted to a classroom as well. And I think there is a video tutorial that is being shared by the UPOU network. So go to the website, upounetworks.edu.ph, para ma-convert mo yung Facebook into a classroom setup, meaning divided siya into different units or modules. And then meron siyang feature, I think, for online discussions. Meron din siyang feature for online polls. I'm not so sure about online quizzes, no? Pero kung wala siya at Facebook ang ginagamit nyo for your own classes, you can use SurveyMonkey, halimbawa. It's a site that is used for survey, but it can also be used for quizzes, online quizzes, no? Yun nga lang, sa labas niya kukunin. Pero you as a teacher, may access ka dun sa i-create mong online quiz sa site na yun, so you can really check kung ano yung performance ng mga estudyante. Ang isa pang metaphor na nakikita ko dun sa online teacher or remote teacher is that you are more like a conductor now. You are yung mga estudyante mo, they're doing their own thing out there, no, sa classroom, sa bahay nila or somewhere else. Tapos gina-guide mo sila, orchestrate mo sila. Papupuntahin mo sila sa ganitong website, papupuntahin mo sila. For some schools kasi hindi nila ma-afford na mag-set up ng learning management system. I understand that, and they may be using Facebook Classroom only to deliver their classes, no? So, dahil nga Facebook is not specifically designed for teaching and learning, although pwede siyang i-set up sa classroom, it has a lot of limitations. So, pwede kukuha ka ng ibang mga application na doon mo pagagawa sa estudyante. Lalabas ka ngayon. So, as a conductor, as a parang metaphor ko nga kanina, as a master chef, ikaw ang nagko-combine ng different ingredients na to. Pinagsasama-sama mo itong different videos, podcast, text, online quiz application, di ba? Online discussion board. Marami ding online discussion board na application na magagamit out there eh. So pwede mong pagsama-samahin to, no? And then parang bubuo ka ng parang yung own concoction that will be suitable for your target learners and of course learning outcomes.
Thank you for joining us. We are DICT MC1 World Champion at World Summit on Information Society Prizes 2020 by International Telecommunications Union. We wish you a safe and blessed week. Please stay negative. Bye po!